On March 6, 2025, a man in a clean white Tundra pulled into my bay holding a receipt, the way some people hold a parking ticket they're sure they didn't deserve. He'd just bought 4 new tires down the road, and the shop had added a line item he didn't understand. Nitrogen fill, $90, green valve caps and all. He wasn't angry. He was confused. He looked at me and asked the question I've heard 1,000 times in 40 years under these lifts. Is this stuff actually doing anything, or did I just get talked into paying for air? Today I'm going to tell you the truth about nitrogen in tires. Not the version the upsell counter tells you, and not the version the internet tells you either. The real one, the one that lands somewhere in the uncomfortable middle, because that's where almost every honest answer in this trade lives. Here's the thing you have to understand before anything else makes sense. The air you breathe right now, the air a gas station pump shoves into your tire for free, is already mostly nitrogen. Just under 78% of it. Another 21% is oxygen, and the last sliver is water vapor, carbon dioxide, and a few odds and ends. So when a shop sells you a nitrogen fill, they are not handing you some exotic gas. They are taking out the oxygen and the moisture and leaving you with the part that was already doing most of the work. That is it. That is the whole magic trick. And once you understand that, the entire question changes from is nitrogen better to is removing that last 21% worth what they are charging me. That is a very different question, and the answer depends on things nobody at the counter bothers to explain. Let me back up and tell you why nitrogen ever got into tires in the first place, because the story is real, and the engineering behind it is legitimate. This is not snake oil. Aircraft tires run on nitrogen. Race cars run on nitrogen. And they do it for reasons that actually matter at 30,000 feet and 180 miles per hour. When a jet lands, its tires go from the deep freeze of high altitude to slamming onto hot pavement in a matter of seconds. That kind of temperature swing makes gas expand and contract violently. Nitrogen, being dry and stable, swings less. On a race car, where a 1 or 2 pounds per square inch change mid-stint can shift how the car grips a corner, that stability is worth real money and real lap time. So the people selling you nitrogen are not lying when they say the pros use it. They're just hoping you won't ask the next question, which is whether your Tacoma commuting to work has anything in common with an F-18. It mostly doesn't, but not entirely. So let's go through what nitrogen actually does, claim by claim, and I'll tell you which ones hold up and which ones fall apart the second you look at them closely. The first claim is the big one. Nitrogen holds pressure longer. This one is true. It's genuinely true, and the science is simple. A nitrogen molecule is slightly larger than an oxygen molecule, and tire rubber is not a perfect seal. It's porous at a microscopic level. Gas slowly works its way out through the rubber itself, a process called permeation, and the smaller oxygen molecules slip through faster than the bigger nitrogen ones. So a nitrogen-filled tire does lose pressure more slowly. That is a real, measurable, repeatable fact. But here's where 40 years of watching people get sold, things kicks in. The phrase more slowly is carrying a lot of weight in that sentence, and nobody ever tells you how much more slowly. So let me give you the number, because the number is the entire argument. Consumer Reports ran a study on this. They took 31 different tire models, filled some with air and some with nitrogen, set them outside for a full year, and measured what was left. The air-filled tires lost about 3.5 pounds per square inch over 12 months. The nitrogen-filled tires lost about 2.2 pounds per square inch. Do the math, that's a difference of 1.3 pounds per square inch over an entire year. Sit with that for a second because it's the whole ball game. We are not talking about nitrogen keeping your tires perfect while regular air drains away. We're talking about a difference of barely more than 1 pound per square inch spread across 12 months. A normal air-filled tire loses somewhere between 1 and 2 pounds per square inch a month on its own, just from permeation and temperature. Your tires lose more pressure between a warm afternoon and a cold morning than nitrogen saves you in a year. And this is where the second claim starts to wobble. They'll tell you nitrogen means better fuel economy and longer tire life. And they'll string it together like a logical chain. Nitrogen holds pressure. Proper pressure means less rolling resistance and even wear. Therefore, nitrogen saves you gas and tires. Every link in that chain is technically true except the part where it matters. Because the fuel and wear benefits come from correct tire pressure, not from what gas is inside the tire. And a 1.3 pounds per square inch advantage over a year is nowhere near enough to show up at the pump or on your tread. Properly inflated tires save you money. Nitrogen just helps them stay properly inflated a tiny bit longer, and a tiny bit is doing all the lifting in that sentence. Now let me give nitrogen its fair due, because there's one claim that's more real than the skeptics admit. And it's the one almost nobody at the counter even knows to mention. It's not about pressure, it's about moisture. Regular compressed air carries water vapor. You've seen it even if you didn't know what you were looking at, that little spit of water that comes out of a shop airline on a humid day. That moisture goes into your tire. And every time your tire heats up from driving and cools back down overnight, that water vapor inside is going through its own cycle, and water plus oxygen plus metal is the recipe for corrosion. Over a long enough time, that moisture can sit against the inside of your wheel and against the steel belts inside the tire and start the slow work of rust. Nitrogen, the way it's sold, is dry. Oxygen stripped out, moisture stripped out. No water vapor means less of that internal corrosion. This is a genuine engineering benefit, and it's the strongest argument nitrogen has. But here's the uncomfortable truth, and it's the same uncomfortable truth that runs underneath this entire trade. A benefit that's real isn't the same as a benefit that matters to you. Because for that internal corrosion to actually become your problem, a lot has to go wrong over a lot of years. Modern alloy wheels are coated specifically to resist exactly this kind of corrosion. The steel parts inside your tire that could rust are protected. And on a vehicle that actually gets driven, the tread wears out and you replace the tires long before the trace amount of moisture inside ever does meaningful damage to the rubber or the rim. The shops that sell you on rust prevention are describing a real chemical process that, for most drivers, finishes its damage on a timeline you'll never reach. Where it does matter is the edge cases. A classic truck that sits in a barn most of the year, a trailer that gets parked for seasons at a time, wheels you intend to keep for decades. Those owners get something real. The guy driving his 4Runner 40,000 miles a year does not. So now you understand the actual shape of this thing. Nitrogen does everything they say it does. It just does all of it in amounts too small to matter to a normal person driving a normal vehicle. And that's the part the upsell counter will never frame honestly, because there's no money in honesty here. Let me tell you why this gets sold so hard, because the incentives explain everything. A nitrogen fill on a new set of tires runs anywhere from $70 to $175 at some places. A drain and refill on your existing tires can run up to $30 per tire. And topping off, which you'll need to do, runs $5 to $7 per tire at a shop that has the nitrogen tank. Compare that to the air machine at the gas station, which is free or costs you $1. The margin on nitrogen is enormous because the product costs the shop almost nothing. It's mostly the gas that's already in the atmosphere, run through a machine that pulls the oxygen out. When something has that kind of markup and a story attached that sounds scientific, it gets pushed hard. Green valve caps and a confident explanation, and most people sign. And here's the part that actually worries me more than the wasted money. Nitrogen gets sold with a dangerous little lie wrapped around it. The idea that now your tires are handled, that you can stop thinking about them. I have seen this exact mistake more times than I can count. A driver gets nitrogen, decides his tires are now low maintenance, and stops checking his pressure for months. And that is so much worse than just using free air and checking it regularly, because nitrogen does not stop leaks. It does not seal a nail. It does not stop the slow loss that every tire experiences. The single most important thing you can do for your fuel economy, your tire life, and your safety is keep your tires at the pressure on the sticker inside your driver's door. A tire properly inflated with plain old gas station air will outperform a neglected tire filled with the purest nitrogen on earth every single time. The gas inside is a footnote. The pressure is the whole story. So let me answer the man with the white Tundra, and let me answer you the same way I answered him. If a shop fills your new tires with nitrogen for free as part of the deal, take it. It does no harm, and the small benefits are yours at no cost. If they want to charge you real money for it, understand exactly what you're buying: a 1 pound per square inch advantage over a year and a corrosion benefit you'll probably never live long enough in that set of tires to see. For the vast majority of drivers, that is not worth $90, and it is definitely not worth the false sense of security that makes you stop checking your pressure. And one more thing, because this question always comes next. If you've got nitrogen in your tires right now and you're stuck somewhere with a low tire and the only thing available is a regular air pump, use it. Put the air in. There is no harm in mixing the two. You're not going to damage anything. You're not going to cause a reaction. You're just slightly diluting the purity, which matters far less than driving around on an underinflated tire. Never, ever leave a tire low because you're waiting to find a nitrogen tank. That trade is backwards, and it's exactly the kind of thinking the green valve caps put in people's heads. The honest version of this whole subject fits in a sentence. Nitrogen is real, it's just small. Everything they sell you is true, and almost none of it is worth the price for a normal driver. The expensive part of tire ownership was never the gas inside them. It was believing that gas could replace the 5 minutes a month it takes to check your pressure and actually look at your tires. That guy drove off without paying for nitrogen on his next set. He told me he was going to buy a $20 pressure gauge instead and actually use it. That's the best trade in this entire conversation, and it's the one nobody's selling. If this cleared up something a shop never explained to you, hit like so more truck owners see it. Subscribe if you want the honest version of the stuff that gets sold at the counter, the version that saves you money instead of taking it. And if you've ever paid for nitrogen and wondered the same thing this guy did, drop it in the comments, because the most expensive thing in this trade was never the part. It was the story attached to it, and now you know how to tell the difference.